Hello, everybody. Glad you could join us for episode number 43 of the Launch and Beyond podcast, a podcast designed to support you in not only achieving great success in your business, but also in other areas of life as well. Within the business sense, the term KPIs, or key performance indicators, are a tool or metric used to determine how much energy, effort, and time you're putting into critical tasks and actions that are designed to achieve your specific outcome. If you're a real estate agent, for example, some important KPIs that would be tracked and measured would include the number of prospect calls you made, how many buyer inquiries you followed up with, how many prospect proposals you made, and how many of these proposals that have progressed to a paid client. In a sense, what we're focusing on is how diligent and committed are you in the plan for your success. While many people can understand the importance of KPIs within the business sense, they aren't able to grasp the idea that they can also apply to actions and behaviors to support you in being the best version of yourself, to show up fresh, rested, motivated, and ready to go. The most successful, fulfilled people in all areas of life have a deliberate set of practices, routines, and rituals that nourish and support them to become the best version of themselves. In this week's episode titled Your Personal KPIs, we outline some of the key personal metrics that, if monitored and addressed, could make a massive difference to your life and your results. We hope you enjoy it. So good morning, Adam. It's great to be in studio with you again today. We've got a big topic today about KPIs. So before we start, how about a really quick roundup, because I know you hit a big milestone this week. It'd be great to share, and then we can get stuck into KPIs, because a lot of that will be relevant in what we talk about today.
Yeah, well, this week, last week of 75 Hard, this is my fourth time around, third time completing it. So that happened yesterday. But as I was saying to you, I've got the tightest hip flexors because I've just been running all week. So Wednesday I did 9Ks, Thursday I did 10, and then yesterday I did the half marathon, 21.1Ks. So I've been pretty fatigued, but I haven't been drinking, even though I'm starting like this alcohol sort of, this project that we're moving forward with. So I'm finally starting to, toy with the idea of drinking, and I really want to get some in today. But
Are you doing market research? Is that market research and a
sensitization? That's all a write-off. I've got a little tin of gin and tonic in front of me for R&D, but I'm toying with the idea of not going back into that, really heavy boozy lifestyle because I'm feeling so good.
Yep.
And I've got the triathlon season coming. I booked all my sessions this week. It came live. So January 17 is the first one. And when I've got great momentum, I don't want to sit here and then abuse my body after it's been so good to me for so long. So I guess this is R&D and, maybe a couple more weeks because my sister's getting married next week, and then back onto the healthy lifestyle again.
All right.
So yeah. Yeah. How's your week been?
Great week. As we're closing out on the year, things are ramping up. It's actually really interesting that I've noticed that in people, there's the backlog. So we had 112 days of lockdown here in Melbourne, and there's that catch-up effect. So whoever was shut, you're finding this rebound effect where people, they're just, you talk to hairdressers, you talk to beauticians, you talk to industries that have been shut, they're going gangbusters now. They're the people who haven't been able to see them for a long period of time. So we've got that coupled with the ramp up to Christmas as well. So it's a really interesting dynamic, I'm certainly in that, there's industries of my own, within the three business structures that we have that are all finishing the year strong. And it's important and this is why I guess that was the motivation behind today, the KPIs, the metrics that allow you to be the best version of you. Well, for me, a lot of these are important to ensure that I sustain myself going into the end of the year. So traditionally it's a sprint for most people, and it's going to be so again for me this year.
Yeah, well, funny you say that because I got a phone call from Kohls, which is one of the big supermarket brands in Australia. When was it? Thursday. And they were saying that they wanted to do work with me, which was awesome. Like, they're approaching me, and I just turned around flat out and said, my factory's not big enough.
Yeah.
I can't do that. You got 800 stores. And then they go, well, we've got the local bakery, which is, they call it Kohls Local, which is a bit more boutique-y, and there's, I think, 12 or 20 stores at the moment. They go, we can get you in there first.
Yeah.
And if it works, then you can ramp up, and we'll ramp up with you. And so, keeping that going with your KPIs and knowing where you stand, it gave me transparency and honesty when I spoke with this customer, and they loved it because they're like, well, this guy's not bullshitting
Yeah,
us. If
yeah,
he can't deliver, he's going to tell
yeah,
us.
yeah,
And I really enjoyed that. So then what did I do? Next day, I went out and looked at new sites because I'm
yeah,
like, government's giving grants. Kohls
yeah,
actually turns around and gives grants to small businesses because they want to help.
yeah,
Their payment terms aren't the best in
yeah,
terms of it's a long payment, but they're trying to help out people. So they'll go, we'll give you a grant at the start, and then we can also give you a loan to help you
yeah.
ramp up. And it just shows you how, if you have opportunities, you live in a good, clean life, like
Mm.
the exercise, the good diet, honest and happy and healthy and full of love in your heart, opportunities come
Yeah,
around. Even
yeah,
when you're just sitting at home doing nothing, you get a call from Coles.
yeah.
It just blew me away this
But it's
week.
not, and just to, you've earned the right to get to that place.
Yeah.
So it's not like, 'cause a lot of the times, this is what I've learned as well, particularly in my experience as well too. People are watching you for a long time.
Mm.
They may watch how you do things, how you go about things. They may have a qualification process in their mind, and then they'll reach out. So we think that, okay, you're fortunate, it'll happen this year. No, man, it's like I've worked my whole life to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what is the case. How many times people in entertainment industry do you hear that when people say, "Hey, overnight your star rose and you became this ultra successful, basically business person, entrepreneur, musician, whatever," and you go, "Man, I've been applying my craft for so many years, unrewarded, but I've been putting in the grunt work."
Yeah.
And it finally got to the point where it got to critical mass or a critical level where someone paid attention. And I didn't mean to
That the right
interrupt there.
no, that right
You created
person.
those
Yeah.
set of circumstances and situations that put you on the watch of a bigger supermarket. It's
Yeah.
not luck; it's preparation.
I agree with that as well. Try to be humble, but
Yeah.
you bounce
Yeah, no,
back.
that's awesome, man.
But yeah, at the same time, I got a call from a hospital chain. Like they're called Zuki Cafes. They're in
Mhm.
12 or 15 hospitals in Victoria, and they want to do stuff together.
Yeah.
And that happened in the same day.
Yeah,
So it was like
yeah.
that was day 74, and I'm like, I really don't want to give up 75
Yeah,
because now you can see the momentum's building. It took 2.5 months to get to these critical, but that was because as well, we're talking about 2021. We're not talking about 2020 anymore. We're
Yeah.
talking about 6 months down the track. So we're already planning that. So you're saying that we're building momentum to the end of the year. We definitely are. People are like, yep, let's do this. Let's get the deals done before next year.
Yep.
And then we'll roll it out in March or April or
yeah.
May, whenever it comes.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. That's really cool. And so if we continue on from what you were saying there, Adam, like the whole reason why your personal KPIs are important, right? And you kind of touched on it, right? It's number one, you could be kicking the lights out in one area and still feel unfulfilled. All right. So the key performance indicators for you are what gives you joy, what gives you happiness, what gives you fulfillment, what helps you grow and stretch and be fulfilled in all those areas. They're the things that we're going to talk about today. Right. But so many people, and we talk about it so many times in our podcast, success and fulfillment. They're incredibly successful, but they're unfulfilled. Why? Because at some level they're ignoring or not honoring some of these personal KPIs.
Yeah.
Right. So the second one is, you'll see it is people may be lacking drive and inspiration to take action. So if some part of you is unfulfilled, you can't be bothered. I don't want to do things. I don't want. And it's like, hey, dude, and as a coach, it's really hard for me when someone comes in and says, okay, I want to coach with you. I want you to coach me to this outcome. First thing I get very clear on is, okay, I'm not going to do your push-ups for you. I shouldn't want this more for you than you want it for you. So we got to find out what the block is. Why are you behaving that way? So that you basically kind of like get someone out of their own way by clearing that up. But if you find that someone is having to pump you up and excited about it, there's some part of your metric system that you're not honoring. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, I've seen that before as well. A lot of that lacking drive and inspiration, and it's almost like the second I see that in you, I don't want to deal with you
Yeah.
anymore because I don't want to keep giving myself out too much.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But then if you turn around and you just show me a glimmer of hope, I'm like, no, I'm all in with you.
Yeah.
I'll help you.
Yeah. So that's a really important indication. So we'll see that where people are just lacking drive and motivation, and I don't know why. At some subconscious level, or even at a conscious level, they're avoiding or not honoring one of their own metrics for health, success, and fulfillment. So that's really important. The third reason is they could be underperforming. So, for example, they could be doing exceptionally well, but there's another level they know they could get to but because they're not doing that, it's kind of like handcuffing themselves to their capacity potential. So that's really one of the other reasons why identifying the reasons, your own KPIs, and then also what's stopping you from expressing them fully is going to be an important consideration. And fourthly, you're probably not doing your best and highest work. So if you're not fulfilled at some level, a lot of the times people will go through the motions. They'll get stuff done, but it's not, they call it busy work, but not their life work. And that's a really important distinction and a sort of distinction in this context.
Yeah, well, building on that point, last night when I came home from my 21.K run, I did the half mara and I'm like, yeah. And, punched the air on the way through in the last 50 meters and going, yep, I've got this. And then I got home and I go, I could have done more. And it just shows me like how much I've been lacking in the past in terms of the running. Even though I hated every second of last night. Don't get me wrong. The only one part I enjoyed was the last 50 meters where I punched in the air. I was flying. It was someone else running. It wasn't me. But then I was just like, I could have done so much more this whole 75. And not saying it, I'm not discounting it. I did a great job, but I'm just going, my KPI is now higher.
Yeah. Well,
I'm like,
you've leveled, you've brought the baseline up higher to a higher level and an expectation, and it's given you insight into what you can do. So once you see that, you know that it's possible, but you're just choosing not to go to that stage for one reason or another. So it's a personal accountability thing for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things, and I'm sure this is involved somehow, but one of the things I was doing last night when I was running, it was like kilometer 2, kilometer 6, kilometer 8. I was going, all right, so now how's my body reacting? And I was so present in the moment. And I feel like that's why I could give more. It was because I was mind and body so connected. And I'm sitting there going, all right, my ankle strapping feels a little bit too tight this time. And then I stopped in the middle of the run, tore it off, and then freed up my whole body. And I'm like, all right, so next time I'm not going to do that. All right, what's feeling next? At kilometer 12, I felt that my knee started moving a little bit. And then I changed the way that I put my foot down on the ground, and it changed completely. And I'm like, all right. So it was like a running assessment of like how I can get to the next kilometer and the next kilometer and the next kilometer. And it was, again, a performance index. It was just going, how do I increase my performance? And it was running analytics. So I wasn't really focused on the run. It was, how's my body reacting? And I felt that's what drove me further. And that's what made me think I could do the full marathon next time I put on the shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good addition there. So Adam, when we focus on the metrics that we're looking at, 6 of the most common areas that we look at in people's lives are areas that we look at setting up key performance indicators. So when we, as a private client, we have 24 areas that we look at, but for the majority of people, 6 will hit a big part of their world. And for simplicity, with that the 6 we're going to focus on. So the area we're going to look at is number 1, health. Number 2, financial/wealth. Number 3, relationships. Number 4, personal growth and spirituality. Number 5, fun and recreation. And number 6 is contribution. Right? And it'll become apparent as we're going on why the 6 of these are the ones that we're going to focus on. But what most people will look at, and this is what I really wanted to be as a focus of our podcast today, is we can identify them, and at a logical level, we can go, at health, I need to do this, this, and this. I need to do this. Great, awesome. The overarching question I want to ask is, why are you not doing that? To know and not do is to not know. To know and not do is to not know, right? Is an old saying in a proverb. So we're really looking for the contradictions, right? So you say you want this, but your actions and behavior and your routine show opposite. Why? So if we get under that, that's how we create change, because it's not what people know that determines their outcome. It's what they do and do consistently. Yep. We are what we repeatedly do, is what Aristotle said, right? And so this is exactly the metric of it. And so within this podcast, we can look at these 6 key divisions or sectors of life and dissect them and analyze and create KPIs within each and every one of those, that if you followed those consistently, would make a massive difference to your life and world. All right? So you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. I'm rearing.
I'm pumped.
I just want to stop quickly while we're on the good momentum. I just want to say, Jim has said, celebrate your wins. So this is why I thought I'd come in and celebrate today. So I appreciate you and you giving me that advice, because a big part of KPIs is once you've achieved an index or one of your KPIs, you should celebrate it. Doesn't mean you have to go all out every single time, but you have to sit down, be present, and acknowledge it. So before we start off, every time you hit one of these, just sit down and just acknowledge that you've done it. And it builds positive momentum the whole time. So every time you go, well, with health, all right, I hit that. All right, I hit that amount of reps in that amount of sets of bench press and that weight. Cool. Go home, celebrate, and then come back the next day and go, oh, can I do it again? And you do it again, but you do more. And you're building that positive momentum every time, but just celebrate that every time. Don't just come in the gym and go, oh, I'll just pump it out and then move. Because then you don't get that fulfillment that you're constantly talking about.
So let's expand on each and every one of these 6 points, Adam, and we're going to talk about the health aspect in there as well. And so health we look at as the KPI. We all understand that we all need a level of rest, nutrition, sleep, exercise that helps us perform and function at our best. Now, and Adam's smiling like a Cheshire cat here, we all know, like, whether we do it or not, we know what it takes for us to perform at our best, right? So, and for a lot of people, that sleep is a big factor. And without question, as a society, most of us are underslept, right? And as a result, that has an impact on performance. So whether we do or not, what we're highlighting here is the contradiction, because for a lot of people, they'll say, yeah, my health's really important to me. So they're not fulfilling the absolute basics, and their performance and productivity and all those things would go up a lot better once we plugged in these metrics first. So at a very basic level, we go, how much water are you drinking? How much are you resting? What are you putting in your mouth? How much are you exercising? So eat well, move well, think well are the paradigms, so the foundational pyramids of that. And so what we want to look at is, and we've talked about this in the past too, what I'm more interested in is what people do consistently. And before our podcast here, we were just talking with one of my team, and we were talking about a cheat day. We were talking about, okay, what happens is you've had these phenomenal results, but at some point it's a really hard thing to do all the time. A real strict component is a lifestyle is really, really difficult. And for most people, they'll find that if it's too strict, they rebound totally and go the other way. And so if we look at this and go, look, the majority of the time, this is what I do. This is what my action is. This is what my go-to is. And on, one day a week, you might give yourself some slack, not go AWOL, but to release some of that pressure of that, then you'll find that you're going to be on track more often than you're not.
Well, we're talking about nutrition. So when you say release the slack, it's feed the soul, but you don't have to, feed the devil, I guess. So, keep within rough nutritionals, like, have takeaway, but have a healthier version of the takeaway, but feed your soul with it. Like have a healthy burger, because we got a chain called Grill. It's sponsored Melbourne Storm. So, but Grill, they're healthy burgers. They still have the cheese and the bacon and the beef and the chicken and whatever you want, but it's not submerged in oils and fats and all this stuff.
That's actually one of mine. I'll have the Grill burger, the one, because it's got a gluten-free bun. And I actually find as time's gone on, there's certain sensitivity. So actually, if I get a burger, it's usually from them.
And that's a good cheat day meal, because it's still relatively healthy. It's a 500 calorie burger, and you have a portion of chips that's, a couple 100 calories. And you're sitting there, you had a burger and chips and a drink, and you fed your soul. But you haven't necessarily blown out your whole day. So you are, releasing the steam, I guess.
So your KPIs within this metric, and the reason why I want to highlight this is because people will know that, and people will go through this pendulum type moment where they'll carry on a certain type of behavior up until the point where there's this threshold, and they go, man, I can't do this anymore. And they'll rebound totally and go really strict, almost at 180 degrees. And then they'll do that for a while, get some results, and they go, no, it's too hard, I'm off it. And they go back and forth. So I think if you can find a method to say, you know what, for myself personally as a human, I need to get this amount of sleep regularly. I need to ensure that I watch what I eat. I've got to eat these things, avoid these things. Add one thing, take one thing out, but make it like not so strict that you're basically resenting it, because that will only last for a certain amount of time. But ingrain it and go, okay, what good behaviors can I make around my health that help me optimize? And what you'll find, your energy levels will go up, your productivity will go up, you'll be happier, you'll be more energetic, all those things. So they're your KPIs that if you define and follow, make a big difference.
It's funny if you track all these things, which I advise people to do. It is a task when you start off, but there are so many apps out there now. Like for my sessions with my health and nutrition, I use the My Transformation app. So Self Roselle
Mm.
was on the podcast. I use their app, and basically they assign you a dietitian. And there was a lady named Darcy. She was my dietitian, and because I wanted to run about 7 or 8 Ks every single day, and I was eating all my food from home. I was making my own foods and everything. And some days I just go, I messaged her and I said, I don't feel any power.
Mm.
And she's like, maybe your fats need to be increased. And the fact that I knew my performance was based solely off my nutrition, and if one of them was out of whack, my body
Mm.
wouldn't respond. It shows you how delicate you can be. So, if you are having that junk food or bad drinks, soft drinks, or soda, or whatever you want to call it, and your body starts to react in a way that affects your mind. So, and your outputs and your performance, like it's so simple.
Mm. For me, the biggest thing that I found was one, eliminated sugar.
Mm.
That was without doubt. That's been the biggest change to my health, in terms of just clearer, less agitated. I don't get the spikes up and down, like phenomenal. So I never used to have a lot of it, but when I went right, it's out totally. Massive difference.
Yeah, I was the one in the family that missed the sweet tooth gene. So I'm salt, chili, and lemon. Give me that stuff, I'll go all day long.
They're yours. Okay, so that's point one. So if you set some metrics around your health and follow those consistently, you'll notice a big difference. The second one is the financial and wealth area, and really what we're talking about here is for most people is do you have a specific plan to get from where you are to where you want to get to? So it's all well and good to say, listen, I need this financial goal or this financial outcome, but have you broken it down to a point of steps? So what are you going to do? What specific? This is where financial advisors come into play, accountants, and all great people who are licensed who will help you along that way. That'll give you advice in terms of how you're tracking. But on a personal level, what disciplines and behaviors you have in place? Like it's so simple. It can be a money box scenario. It can be an automatic debit. It could be something that's just automatically wired out of your account into a savings account and just letting it work. But it's if you're waiting until, okay, I'm going to get really inspired, I'm going to have this big windfall and then I'll do something, time will pass you by. And so the people who and financial advisors do this all the time, they'll show you the impact of compound growth and wealth over time and how powerful that is, rather than waiting too long. So if you've got a strategy for your finances and wealth, what ultimately that will do is it'll achieve freedom and choice for you. But it's got to start from somewhere. It's got to start with the disciplines and daily habits and routines of following that along.
Yeah, well, a lot of people always have the end result, but how do you get there? And KPIs are a great way to track how to get there. So you could say, I want to make $10 million. And then someone will turn around and go, how? And you're like, oh, don't worry, I'll make it. But no, you've got to have tasks. You've got to have steps and goals that you've got to reach. And as you said, like a money box is a great way. So, or a direct debit. So I want to make $10 million in 3 years. Let's just say, how are you going to make that? What do you need to make? How do you set that aside so that you can guarantee? Do you make your money work for you? Do you go into investment properties? Do you go, actually, I'm going to consult? So what do you do when you consult? You upskill in your personal life. So you might right now invest in your education to build yourself up to be the best consultant so that you can go out and charge that 5, 10, 20, 50 grand for that day's worth of work. And then that way you can go and get to your $10 million. But you need those indexes, KPIs. You need to have those benchmarks and those goals to reach. Otherwise, you're just saying words.
Yep.
There's no direction.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And part of that is also looking at, what do I need to do within my wheelhouse, within my business? How many calls do I need to make? How many people do I need to meet and greet? What kind of conversations on it? So there's so many things that you can track that you can help, number one, in the attraction phase. So you've got to look at that within that wheelhouse and say, okay, well, what do I need to attract the initial amount of capital? So it could be increase my business, do some extra work, do some consult, all those kind of things. Once I've got it, how do I retain it? How do I have the emotion around not feeling? Because people will basically act emotionally in a lot of the times, and you see that so many times. It's really interesting where someone's when I've spoken to a lot of people who are trying to build for their first house, they have this discipline, whatever, and they get to this point where they get despondent and they go, stuff it, I'm never going to get it, and they blow it all. They go off and do that, and so that takes them further away. So the three parts of it are, obviously attracting it. Number one is retaining it. So how do you maintain it? How do you get into a process of sustaining it? And then number three, how do you compound it? And and that's where the you're talking about what strategy and methodology you're using to get you closer. But at each and every one of those, there's a subset of actions and a subset of metrics that you can track to make sure that you're moving the needle in the direction you want to go. So really, really important in there as well. And the third area we're going to look at, Adam, is relationships. And just a reminder, everybody, we've got show notes here for you as well that you can refer back to on our website. Number three, as I said, is relationships. When we look at it, when we break it down, connection and connection with other people is a fundamental human need. It's really what gives us richness in life. And it's not only just in primary relationships, it's in all friendships and relationships. So that the importance of connecting with someone, having a bond is what enriches our life. And it really highlighted it for a lot of us, particularly during the pandemic where we were isolated from people, just how that impacted people on that metric. So depression rates went up, anxiety went up, all those kind of metrics, because we were missing out on that connection, that socialization component. And so if relationships are important to you, some people do it naturally. Some people seek out people and have these great, strong relationships. And you look at them and go, well, my wealth is in my relational capital. I've got fantastic relationships with my family, with my primary relationship, my friends, but it's not an accident. There's usually been a process that they've gone about. And if you dissect what these people do, they'll connect with people regularly. They'll reach out to them. They'll take an interest in what's going on in their lives and worlds. They'll be of support. They'll help, all those kind of things. So there's a strategy around it. And if that's not your strength, you may need to be more deliberate in that process. You might go, okay, I have to reach out to 3 or 4 people this week. I have to, and they could be your KPIs. They could be if your default, whenever anybody asks you, hey, would you like to go out? Is, oh, no. What would happen if you flipped it and did it the other way around? But there has to be a process of instigating that.
It's like the yes man, just
like
say yes.
Man. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, one of the things I find with relationships, and we've all heard this before, is like when you hear a politician, for instance, put down a law or put down a new suggestion, and then the media or people will go, hey, that guy's lost contact. How often does he come and actually live life like the rest of us? This guy's lost contact. And that's most of the time because they stay with their politician buddies, and which is their work. So they stay at work and then they go home and they're in their fluffy little cloud, but they don't go out and see people or talk to people or new people. And yes, they campaign in their own region, but how often do they sit down and actually talk to the people? They might do it for 2 months before an election so people know who their face is, but how much actually registers in there? And they're losing this relationship with the people. It's not just, I know we're talking about primary and family relationships.
It's the same thing. It's the same principle. It's transferable. Yeah,
exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I do love going to a bar and sitting down next to a random and just having a chat. It doesn't need to lead on to somewhere. It doesn't. You just have a chat, and it builds that skill. And it's nice to see different perspectives on lives, because sometimes we surround ourselves with so many people that think like us that we can't even fathom looking at a different direction of thinking.
Yeah.
And this is how you can enhance your life, is because you understand more of the world rather than just sitting in your little bubble.
Yeah.
So this is a way that if you go out and say, hey, let's go to the bus stop and just talk to the next person and see how their life is and their day and what they find interesting, you can see a different way of living.
Yeah.
So I think that enhances your life as well. And, if you set the goal of say, hey, I want to meet 3 new people every week.
Yep.
you go out there and you'll
That could
do
be a
it.
metric. That's
Yeah.
a metric, and it can be reverse engineered to that level. If that's not your default, if you just do it naturally, you'll go, "Huh, that sounds so unnecessary." Yeah, but there's people who who are challenged by this, who have to make it a priority and an intention to be able to do that.
Yeah, and you can see that some people who don't do this, they live in their comfort zone, and
Mm.
then in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they start almost living like a hermit,
Mm.
and they're just comfortable. Hey, as it's up to them.
Yeah,
But for me, I want something more,
yeah,
and I don't want to live that hermit life.
yeah. Well, like I said, it's a human need. It's not an essential human need because people can um, do without it metaphorically, but it's not it's a growth need. So they
Mm.
need to grow as a person, and they have to be able to do that to nurture out. So that's when it works in its really well way. But with relationships, I want to go the 180 degree that uh, perspective from that and say some relationships that don't serve you well, toxic one, for example, you may need to have metrics around that. You may need to look at and do an audit on elements of your will and say, you know what, this doesn't serve me anymore. Or being around this type of group or these type of people doesn't serve me in the greater scheme of things. And that's really hard, but you're choosing you. You're choosing your own fulfillment out of what's best for you. It doesn't have to be basically ruthless in there, but you need to get clear that this is not serving me very well, and actually starting to make some decisions and metrics around being away from that.
Be ruthless, block and delete,
Well,
burn the phone. Don't
Well-
ever talk to them again.
well, the reason I say that is because for some of them they could be family members.
Yeah, I know.
Right. And I agree with you. It's like, dude, I just short sword, see you later, bye. But what I've realized is that sometimes, and these are the hard ones, is we'll tolerate things from our loved ones that we wouldn't tolerate from somebody else, or we will have expectations and assumptions of the people most close to us that take for granted that relationship, and that's not cool either. So it's a case of how do you have a relationship that's still, like if you're in your primary relationship and you've been together 30 years, you want to make sure that you're still hanging to be with each other, not just tolerating each other just for convenience, right? And by the same token, but that's not an accident. There's a process that's gone around that. But if someone isn't serving you at some point, you know that. And at some point, this is not for me telling people what to do, but it's a case of, okay, what are you going to do about that? You're either going to change it or you're going to basically just shrink. And that your metric, your happiness metric is going to be compromised. You're never going to move on and fulfill the upside of and the color in life when you're having to dampen down your joy because of the people around you that you're tolerating.
Yeah, well, 3 or 4 years ago, I was deep and thick into the hospitality world, working in bars, working in restaurants, and all this stuff. And there's a lot of alcohol abuse. There's a lot of drug use. It's known in the industry and in the world. And they're not focused so much on health. There's, if you see a healthy chef, he's like the once off, and you're like, oh, wow, look at that guy. We'll get him on a TV show because he actually looks, semi healthy. And I've known chefs and bartenders who can photogenically recite books to you about cocktails, about different recipes, who wrote it, what year it came out. I know these people, and they're sitting here and saying to me, how did you break out of that mold? It's like, because I stopped hanging around with a lot of the negative people.
Yeah.
And it hurt because they were my friends, but at the same time I was sitting there going, is this really going to help me in the future? In 10 years, 15 years, I might not even know this person again. And today I love you. Tomorrow we might not even know each other. So I started understanding that, with toxic people, you have to be very selective. And yeah, when we're together, I'll be your best friend. But outside of that, sometimes you just got to come back a little bit and be safe with who you choose to spend your time with. As we've spoken before in previous podcasts, you are the product of the 5 people who you hang around with. So if you're always hanging around with people who don't put health as a premium, don't worry about wealth, they're neglectful on their body by drinking or doing drugs, that's the lifestyle you're going to trickle down to. So, and if you want growth, hey, I'm not saying any lifestyle is wrong, but if you want growth, you've got to identify and select who you want to be around. You've got to go who is toxic and who's not toxic.
Yeah. It's designing and living a life of design,
Yep.
as opposed to a life of reaction. And if your default is, look, I'll just rock up and go with the flow always, well, that's going to be great. But a lot of times you're going to be basically led down the river in a different path that you necessarily want to go down. And so this is why it's if you take full ownership of your life by being intentional and having strategies consistent with where you want to go, that will help you get there. That's pretty much it, So
Bang on.
yeah, that's the go. So point number 4, Adam, in some KPIs that people may want to identify and look at is in the area of personal growth and spirituality. And this is a recurring theme within our podcast. So it's business and entrepreneurial, but there's a huge personal growth and development space and growth about that as well, because it's another human fundamental human need. So the importance of growing. And so the old saying is, when you're green, you grow, and you're ripe, you rot. When you're growing, when you're learning, you're expanding it. When you're kind of like shut down from it, I don't want to grow and whatever, you just do what everybody else does. You don't actually grow and thrive as a person. And so it's so important that we stretch ourselves. It's so important that we put ourselves in situations where we test our beliefs, test our assumptions, have people around us that don't reinforce our blind spots because they're identical to us, and it expands our whole world. This is what travel's about. This is what art's about. Goodness sake, this is what psychedelics are for a lot of people, because it expands their whole consciousness. And this is what it's about, awareness. And when you're doing that, that's where spirituality comes into it as well. Because when people are starting to think about personal growth, they look at their own role, and they look at their own role within the universe, and then they look at other things. And that is a natural byproduct of expanding and awareness of your own role in life and all those kind of things. So we've touched on that in the past, around the areas around your purpose and all those things, but it's a really important component.
Yeah, and I find with the personal growth, it's a massive, massive benefit to you. It's when you see people starting off, and we talk about above the line and below the line, people starting off in a journey in anything, in a new industry as a staff member or as a student, and they get a bad mark, they blame someone. Whereas someone who is more enlightened, and I use that term, open, like in quotes, someone who's more enlightened will go, well, I didn't study enough, because they're open to the option that they have a downfall, right? And that's where personal growth comes in, because you look within. Whereas if you're just, starting off, you start blaming people, and it becomes bad. And you spoke about travel, and one of the main things is, like, when you go to Fiji or Vanuatu, like they're third world countries, but some of the people are the happiest ever. And you look, and I remember I was having a conversation this week, and someone was like, oh, I'm stressed at work, and I'm getting way more work than I should. And, I'm not moving in the right direction that I want to be. And I responded, well, tell me 3 things that you're happy about or that you're grateful for in life that you probably take for granted. And I think, I don't want to name too many, because then it will give away who it is. But I said, my things that I'm grateful for is air in my lungs, food in my belly, and a bed with a roof over my head. And that's it. And that was because I've seen a lot worse, but it makes me more grateful. But that came from travel, because I wanted to grow myself and I wanted to see more, and I want to help put that into other people as well. So I need to live that life and see where it is. But at the same time, if we're talking business wise, how do you expect to make $10 million or $100 million answers to questions if you haven't put the development in? Right now, if you're starting and your business is relatively successful and you're turning over $1 million a year, that's great. But how are you personally going to grow to be able to make $10 million decisions? And then when you make $10 million decisions, how are you going to invest in yourself and then grow to make $20 million decisions? And that's where the constant journey of personal growth and spirituality comes in the business sense. In the personal sense, it gives you, like, it fills your heart, and you've got to be grateful and humble and open to, change in your life. And yeah, it's a big topic. That could be a topic in itself.
It is because personal growth is essential in terms of so many areas that you've touched on.
Yeah.
Growth, allowing you to go from where you are to where you're going to get to. Quite often you have to expand the version of yourself that allows that to happen. You've got to do it before it happens. You can't go, okay, I'm going to be running. You talk about business sense. Okay, if you're running the $1 million version of yourself and the $10 million version of yourself, you don't run 10 times the 1 million version of yourself to get to 10 million. Your whole thinking has to change in order to create that. And it's not mechanics, it's psychology. And so you have to expand, collapse your belief system, collapse your blind spots, expand yourself, lean into the great unknown to make that possible. And that's just one of the metrics. And it's a whole lot of areas as well, like forgiveness. You may be carrying wounds and scars of hurts from a bygone time. But then if you don't release those, let those go, those burdens, you're carrying them with you. And they're going to keep, it's not the gift that keeps on giving, it's the wound that keeps on hurting. And so when you are able to grow and expand and take the learning, appreciate what you've learned and who you've become as a result of that and move on, that's going to serve you. But that can't happen unless you're committed to a lifetime of and a lifestyle of personal growth and development.
You made that sound so much better than what I was saying.
Oh.
But actually, just to add on to what you said, like the $1 million version of you and the $10 million version of you, you can't 10 times yourself.
Exactly.
And if you're a micromanager or if you're someone who's so heavily focused physically in a business, you can't make 10 of you to get to the 10 million. You've got to rethink your way. You've got to learn how to delegate. You've got to learn how to bring on more staff. You've got to learn how to increase efficiencies so that your new staff that come on don't have to struggle as much as what you did. There's so many ways to change your mindset to be able to go to that 10 times version without making 10 of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's a leadership specialist, John C. Maxwell, I think I've referenced many times, has been a fantastic help for me in the past. And he says, it's a case of what do you need to give up to go up?
Yep.
And it's exactly that. It's let go or give up your beliefs, give up your limitations, give up your doubts, those things. And that allows you to expand and grow. But it's within, you have to grow. That's the realm of it. And along the way, that's where your spirituality and your openness to different concepts, ideas comes into it. So it's really, really helpful. You're right. That could be a podcast episode in itself.
Yeah, that's a big one
as well. So how about let's just change the mood a little bit. And point number 5 is fun and recreation, because we all know that all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. The importance of fun and recreation. I've had clients who, if there's no fun built into what they're doing, and if the pleasure centers of their brain aren't stimulated, at that some point they could be cranking at a really high level, and the point they go, that's it, man, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore because it's not fun. And how many times you hear people who externally they look like they've got everything, but they're hating every minute of it. And there has to be fun built into it so that it keeps reaffirming. And it's not just the outcome that can be fun. It's got to be something within there that you find joy. It could be that you rewire the whole experience and make it fun. Something you need to build that part in. And then by extension, the recreation, like there's got to be, like we said about the rewards after you're 75 hard, some acknowledgement of that, some downtime, some contrast to just grind, because the brain is always looking for meaning. And if the meaning is always, you just got to keep working, it will run out of puff at some point.
Yeah, well, one of the ways I look at this is any professional sports team doesn't go 12 months long.
No.
They go 9 months. They might have 3 months off. Doesn't have to, and we're not a professional sports team, so we don't have to have that off all the time. We could do 3 months hard and then 1 month off, and then 3 months hard and then 1 month off, and then and just go in that cycle so that you do have. All right, I'm using a month. That's a pretty long time, but you've got this downtime that you build in so that you can just relax, calibrate yourself, enjoy, catch up with your friends that you've sort of missed out on, and live your life. And then you go back into that personal growth mode and you build yourself and expand. And then you can relax just for a little bit. It could be a week. It doesn't have to be a month, but you just have a bit of downtime and you recharge your batteries, because there's no point in time where personal growth becomes less stressful on you, because if it's becoming less stressful, you're not growing. You have to stress yourself to be able to grow to that next level. And that's one of the things about personal growth. But last year when we were doing the dinners with Lux, there was one guy there specifically, and I think his highest value was fun and recreation. And it was funny because there was like 10 people at the table, or 12, 15. I forget the exact number at that dinner. But everyone on the table just turned around and go, "Oh wow, yeah."
Wow. Yeah.
We didn't
was a
even think
learning
about,
moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone just turned around and go, we could learn from this guy because he's living life with fun and recreation as one of his highest values.
Yeah.
And it changed the whole table and the whole dynamic for the dinner.
Yeah. And it's actually really interesting you say that, because you know how it talked about you've got to have a strategy for it. Well, he had a strategy. So he was building in what he found was creativity and fun and games. And this person put that into his schedule as a deliberate action. So he had that element fulfilled. And so consequently you go, great, now I can go and slay dragons. But I've had that part of my world that's been fulfilled that I'm really grateful for. And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And fun and metric, it's got to be enjoyable. Like for me, I love going to live events.
Yeah.
Love going to live events, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a theater, whether it's whatever. I love it. Movies, I love it. Now I haven't been able to get that done, and so there's a part of me that's really craving and missing that. So, all right, there's been an basically exceptional circumstances this year, but if this doesn't get nurtured over time, I'm just giving you one example. After a while, the body goes, "Oh, what's the point?" It goes through that process. Now, imagine you have 6 areas in your world that you're doing that to. If you know fun's important to you, you know that your own purpose work is important, and you don't feed that work. If you're going through, relationships, and you could be nurturing a relationship with people, but you're choosing not to. Imagine how you dull down every one of those worlds. It's any wonder you're not living a life of fulfillment and joy, because you've deliberately dialed down or not made a priority of seeking those things out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things was, when I was coming out of lockdown, people are asking me, "Oh, what do you really want to do?" And I go, "I want to go and watch live music in Fitzroy,
Yeah.
and I want the floor to be sticky so that when you step on with your shoes, you hear that like Velcro just coming up."
I've been a glassy man, and I used to, like I used to pour drinks. I used to be a bartender as well, and I got to say that at the end of the night, when you're walking along and everybody's, like it's just, I get it.
Yeah.
And to me, it just brought me memories of having to hose down the whole back section.
Hey, I'm not saying it's a pleasant thing, but I'm like, that was the vision that I had, was the sticky floors and the beer that you don't know if that glass was washed properly, and you're sitting there watching a live band.
With COVID now, how many suddenly that image has just changed.
Yeah.
You suddenly go, dude, that's not.
I want it to be as clean.
All the nuts on the bar,
Yeah.
no one's going to touch those.
No.
No way. All right, good. So, Adam, our final point is about contribution, and contribution is it's another fundamental human need, because when you're living a life of fulfillment, quite often that'll happen when you're contributing to something greater than yourself, right? And and it doesn't have to be money. It can be a contribution of yourself or contribution to. But that feeling of being able to contribute, be a part of something, a movement, an action, a committee, a volunteer, spend time with people, all those areas of contribution help you. And I know, particularly for me, when I was growing up, and when I say not even growing up, sorry, when I was in the early years of practice, and I had young kids, and I was working very long hours. I had a young family, and what I still did, I actually still got involved in Rotary. I was a Rotarian, and it was all about contribution. And I was exhausted. I was tired, but there's something about you know being a part of something that would inspire, that fills your soul, because that allows you to get energy, when you don't have it. And so I would be tired after a busy day, a busy week. The last thing I want to be doing is cooking a barbecue at 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday to raise funds. But really funny, I'd go there, I'd turn up, and the energy, the joy, the gratitude that's coming from people would fill my soul.
Mhm.
And I felt so good about that. And so I would contribute. And to this day, we contribute heavily to a lot of causes that we believe in, both financially and also of our time. And that fuels my soul. They're my key metrics. So for me is Am I looking after self? Great. Am I growing? Yes. Am I contributing? They're the metrics in my world that are really, really important. And so I find that the people who have the greatest level of personal fulfillment are the ones who are contributing over and above themselves. They're contributing to a cause greater than themselves.
Well, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, he had something along these lines. He goes, if you expect to make money, you have to expect to give something in
Mm.
return. So you can't accept, you can't take without giving.
Yeah.
And one of the
It's
things
just
now
a
that,
circular. It's a universal law. It's like
yeah,
keep it going. That's what they do in religion, tithing,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
10% of that has been the figure that people talk about in terms of tithing.
yeah, and then it works well and it fills your cup as well. But one of the things is now that I've got my goal, and I know it's a year and a half away, but I've said with that number that I've selected, what I want to do is buy a shipping container,
Mm.
fill it out with a kitchen, and then doesn't necessarily have to be an active kitchen. Could be just a whole bunch of hot boxes that I prepare food at work, drop it the shipping container somewhere in Melbourne, and just feed as many people like 1,000 portions or 2,000 portions in the day,
Mm.
and then just go and do that once a week
Mm.
because I just want to give it. If it's homeless that come up, if it's backpackers who are struggling, whoever wants it, come grab it.
Mm.
Free food giveaway,
Yeah.
and that's time and financial, but that's what I feel like I want to do,
Yeah.
and I feel I've got an ability to cook really well.
Mm.
So that's what I want to use that as my giving, but also with Sal, like, he's got a charity
Mm.
and I donate to that as well because it's something close to my heart.
Yep.
Whereas it's to children,
Yep.
you know, children don't have the option.
Mm.
They're just born where they're born. Their circumstances are their circumstances, and I love supporting people who focus their on children.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and it actually does. I was reading about a hairdresser in New York City who is pretty much exclusive high end haircuts in New York. 6 days a week he does that. Day 7 he actually goes and volunteers to the homeless and he just cuts their hair for
mm,
nothing. And it's really fascinating because there's such a big contrast. But I believe that that keeps him grounded and that keeps him contributing. That keeps him humble to what he's recognized. What allows him to be rewarded at the highest level that he has is the part of him that can reconcile that and stay grounded to the fact that, you know what, here I'm a humble servant and I'm contributing and I'm helping to a cause. That's really, really powerful. I know some of the most empowering work that I've done, funny as it sounds, is when I've been on missionary trips,
mm,
and I'm actually there just to serve, just to do out of love and contribution is just such a fulfilling process. And in one of the ventures that we've just launched, which is in the financing one, a portion of all funds is actually going to be distributed to causes that I'm passionate about. So that's kind of built in. And I remember years ago, at least Anthony Robbins said this about you don't have to worry about waiting. And what you were saying about Adam is really cool and noble. It's like the big event. But for most people, try and take like 10 cents out of a dollar
mm,
is a lot easier than 100,000 out of a million,
yeah,
And so if you get into the habit of it, the numbers just get bigger as time goes on. But it changed it for me years ago when I always had an intention to pledge a lot of money to some of these causes after my death. And they said, well, we need it now. So I got into the habit of giving regularly now. And as a result of that, they're getting the benefit of that. I'm getting the feeling of what it's like to go, hey, man, I contributed both of my time and my money to something, and I can actually see the expression of it. And that fuels my KPIs, my personal ones.
yeah. And I've been thinking about this for a while, and see, the thing with the podcast is, for me personally, I'm in that journey,
Mm,
and I'm sure you're in the journey as well, but I'm a couple years behind you in the journey. And I'm thinking that even on a Saturday morning for 2 hours, I'll see which ones of my staff want to come out with me. And we just pick up rubbish
mm,
from different neighborhoods because there's so much rubbish and so much pollution and litter. And it could be 2 hours, and I'm happy to pay them.
mm.
If they don't necessarily want to volunteer, I'll pay them. That's fine. But I want to start doing stuff for the community like this. And it pains me when I drive to work and I just see rubbish
Mm.
everywhere. So that's one of the things that I want to inbuilt into Adam's Bake Shop.
Yeah.
But then there's the personal thing that I'm thinking of in the long term goal. But that's just time. Like, it doesn't have to be money, as you said, it's time.
But what it'll do, it's really, really helpful. And I've seen this play out a lot for very successful people is when they reconcile that in their brain, the level of success and growth that they have that they then attract because they don't feel like they don't deserve it. Because at some point they go, yeah, well, look, I get this and I deserve this. And also I help other people. So I'm okay with being rewarded asymmetrically for what I do because I fundamentally I'm a great human.
Yeah, and there's a saying that says, um, everyone's self-made. Sorry, just knocked the table. Everyone is self-made. Only the successful admit it.
Mm, yeah.
So your contribution. All right.
Say that again. Say that again. Everybody's self-made.
Yeah, only the
Right.
successful admit it
Okay. Okay.
because everyone's got they can look after themselves.
Yep.
In essence, like I'm a self-made millionaire is heard everywhere,
Mm,
but no one goes, I'm a self-made, single father of
right.
one that,
Okay.
oh, my wife was a bitch, or,
Okay.
like they start blaming everyone. You live that. If you wanted to be a better partner, we talked about relationships. If you want to be a better partner, be that better partner. Don't blame the other
Mm,
person. All right, sometimes it happens, but most of the time people only act out from neglect. I'm not going to say every time. I don't know every
mm.
situation. It's not a blanket statement, but most of the time it's to do with you. Your choices get put out into the universe and the results come back to you. So again, if you're doing contribution and you're looking after people, you're doing it from a selfless point in your heart, that will come back to you. Like for instance, the Kohls venture,
Mm,
they came looking for me. Why? Because as you said, they've probably been looking at me for a
mm.
little while, and this was the right time for them to approach me, and it happened. And it was because I'm trying to do the podcast. I'm doing as much charity work as I can. I've volunteered a lot for cooking and all this stuff, and they see all this stuff accumulating, and they go, "We want to put our brand behind your brand," and it all works in a big rotation way, as you were saying.
Yeah, totally. So, Adam, as we start closing out the podcast, I guess some the key points to take away from this is we identified six areas of life that if you have specific metrics and specific things that you do in these areas regularly, that's going to make a big difference to your life and world. Whether it's in the area of your health, whether it's in the area of your wealth and finances, your relationships, your own personal growth, spirituality, within fun and recreation, and as we finished off with contribution. So, if you have a strategy and a plan and a regular process of honoring those, they become your personal KPIs. They fulfill you, and they ultimately lead you to the person that you want to be, and have those feelings in there. So, if you were going to leverage what we've spoken about today and consolidate it in your own world, there's some specific action steps that you could do if you want to that would help you out. So, number one is in those six areas that we identified, if you rated yourself out of 10 where you currently were with those, that would be a great starting point. The second point would be, are you happy with that? Because it doesn't mean that people have to be dissatisfied. You could be a 7 out of 10 and you're actually happy with that, in which case, all right, that's fine. Up until the next time you look at this, you may not make that as a priority area. But if you're at a 3 and you're unfulfilled, then there may be a good reason to go, okay, maybe you need to do something different. So the third point is if you're not happy with where you're at in that particular area, what behaviors and actions and level of thinking are you committed to starting and doing consistently and regularly to help you move from where you are to where you want to get to? So it's a case of where are you now, where do you want to get to, and what do you need to do in between to help you get to that strategy and plan. Most people are used to this in a business sense. A lot of people aren't used to it on a personal level. That's why we wanted to identify it today's podcast.
Yeah, that sounds great. And just to go on with point one, when you rate yourself out of 10, add it all up out of 60 and see what mark you get.
Mm,
Are you a 50%? Are you a
mm,
60%? Are you a 70%? As Jim said, if you're fulfilled and you're a 60%, that's great.
mm.
But sometimes you'll see on the list, like contribution might be sitting at a 2 for you. So how would you react to that? What KPIs would you put in? Would you go 10 cents out of every dollar is something I'm going to donate now? Or is it going to be time? do you want to volunteer at the hospital, the children's hospital, for 2 hours a week? Or
it could be like getting on like a phone support or anything.
Yeah.
You could be a political party you believe in, and in which case you go and basically support them in their campaign, or you go and
let her
hand out
drop.
leaflets and
Yeah.
drops, whatever it is. Contribution in some way, shape, or form will enrich you as a human.
Or even the next coffee that you're going to get. We're going to go to a cafe now, but next coffee you get, are you going to buy the coffee for the guy behind you? Well, how much is a coffee? $3.50. All right, get the next one as well. And that's it. It doesn't have to be something,
forward.
it doesn't have to be something massive. Could be a $3 gesture.
Great way to finish it up, Adam. So we hope you've taken something out of this podcast that will help enrich you and your life. We wanted to thank you for joining us once again for this podcast. Reminder to you that you can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and our extended Launch and Beyond community on these channels. Please post any questions and comments you have about the podcast. If you have got questions about podcast, you'll love our next podcast episode where it's a Q&A section. You get a lot out of this. And if you are enjoying our podcast and finding value in it, we'd be grateful if you go over to iTunes and leave us a review. This will allow us to reach more people and have a bigger impact. So from me, thank you. Thanks for joining us once again, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Bye.